I'm going to be teaching a class on buoyancy. It's the first class in our new unit, which is Water is Life. Yes. Okay. And so I'm going over buoyancy. We are doing an experiment where the kids will be able to make predictions, and we'll see what sinks and what doesn't, what floats. The main objective is to learn float and sink. We kind of have a mini objective explaining it so that they know that dense material sinks and that less dense floats. But the main objective is to learn floats and sinks. So let's enjoy the lesson. Okay. All right. Okay. Good morning, class. Good morning, Miss Janet, and good morning.
Good morning,
Miss
everyone.
Sandy. Okay, so today we are starting a new lesson, and we are learning buoyancy. Buoyancy. Okay, I say, you say. It's a big word. Buoyancy. Okay, buoyancy. You say buoyancy. Very good. It was buoyancy. You say buoyancy. Very good. Okay, so I'll put over here. Buoyancy is the ability of something to float or sink in water. Okay, so everybody stand up. Let's do float. This is float. See? Float. Float. Can you say it with me? Float. Very good. Miss Sandy? Float.
Float.
Okay.
Float.
And sink.
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 Okay. Float.
Float.
Sink.
Sink.
Float. Sink. Good job. All right. Okay. All right. So float or sink. Float or sink. So we have a leaf. What do you think? Is it going to float or is it going to sink? What do you think? Yes, Mina. Think it's going to sink? Okay, let's see. It's going to float. So I have a leaf. Let's see. Put it in water. It floats. Do you see? It floats. Can you see this? Okay. All right. Okay. Now we have a marble. A marble. Is it going to float or is it going to sink? Float or sink? What do you think? Okay. What do you think, Jeremy? Okay. He says sink. Let's see. You're right. It's going to sink. Sink. So let's see. Oh, it sunk. Okay. Very good. Okay. Next, why? Why did this happen? Okay. These are molecules. Very, very, very small molecules. When something is dense, there are many, many, many molecules. Molecule, 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 all over. Many, and it is dense. Sorry, I'm wet. Okay, sorry, wrong way. Okay. Okay. So when they're a lot together, it sinks. More dense, sinks. When you have low density, there's more room, okay? There's less molecules, not so many, a little bit, not so many, and it will float. So more molecules, dense, sinks. Less molecules, it's less dense, it will float. Okay, so we have A. A, we have many, many molecules. Many, many, many. Molecules, molecules, molecules. All kinds. More dense. In B, we have a few, some, but it is less dense. Okay? A is dense. B, less dense. Okay? So we got a question. Which is more dense? Which is more dense? A or B? What do you think, Miss Sandy?
Yes. According to your explanation, I think it's A.
A?
Yes.
Okay. You think she's right? Yes? Did it show? It did. Okay, yes, she's right. A, it is more dense because there are many, many molecules. It is dense. Okay, so why? I just answered that. Okay, it is more dense because there are more molecules. That's why. Okay, which will float? A or B? Which will float? A or B? A is dense. B is less dense. So which is going to float? What do you think, Miss Sandy?
Well, if more dense is solid and less dense is loose, and I think B will float.
Okay, let's see. All right, you're right. Very good, Miss Sandy. And why would this be? Okay. It is less dense. There are not as many molecules. Many, many molecules, not as many, little bit. So it is less dense. And when it's less dense, it floats.
Do you want
Okay.
me to explain in Chinese that one?
Yes, why don't you do that?
这一部分讲到密度的问题。那如果一个东西它的分子密度比较多，那它比水的密度还高的话，它就会沉下沉。如果它比水的密度还低，它就会会浮在水面上。所以第一个问题，哪一个有比较多的分子结构？看 A 图，你就可以看得到它的水的它的分子结构是比较多的，所以它可以看得出来。好，第二个问题，为什么？为什么它会比较多它的分子结构？那因为它们很紧密的结合在一起，所以你看得出来。从这个图就可以很清楚的看出来。那第三个问题，哪一个会浮起来？如果它的分子结构比水的密度还低，当然它就会浮起来。所以第三个问题答案就是 B。好，因为它的分子结构比较松，比水的密度还低。好，那为什么？因为它比较少水的那个分子结构，所以既然它低于水的分子结构，它就会浮在水面上。
Okay. So we're going to do our own experiment. So I'm going to pass out a worksheet, and then together we're going to see if these float or sink. So I'll pass out. Put your name on. Okay. So I am going to write. And Miss Sandy is going to put them in. So our first thing is a cork. A cork. Now, so do you think this is going to float, or do you think it's going to sink? All right, we're gonna make a guess. We don't know. So if it floats, we'll say this one. If you think it's gonna sink, we will say this one. Okay, so let's see. Ryan, do you think the cork is gonna float or sink? What do you think? float. Okay, so if you think it's going to float, you check float. If you think it's going to sink, check sink. Okay? All right, give me thumbs up when you're ready. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so let's count. 1, 2, 3.
Here we go.
It floated. Okay.
It's floating.
So I'm going to look. Did I guess correctly? Well, it's floating. I said it's floating. So yes, I was correct. If I said it was sinking, I would say no. Doesn't matter. We're just finding out. Okay. So, check. Go ahead, circle yes or no. Okay? Yes or no. All right. And we have coin as our next one. All right. Okay. So we have a coin. Is it going to float? Or do you think it's going to sink? Float or sink? Okay. All right, Jennifer, what do you think? Float or sink? Think it's going to sink. Okay. All right, if you think it's going to float, check float. If you think it's going to sink, like Jennifer, check sink. Okay. Go ahead real quick. Give me thumbs up. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's do it. Let's count. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let's find out.
It sank. So
It
I
sank.
said it was going to sink, and it did. So I'm going to circle yes. If you checked float, then you would say no, because it did sink. But no, it's not a problem. We will go next one, an eraser. Okay, so we're going to have an eraser. Do you think the eraser is going to float or sink? Float or sink? Tina, what do you think? You think it's going to float? Okay, so if you think it's going to float, check float. If you think it's going to sink, check sink. Okay, let me see. Thumbs up when you're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's count. 1, 2, 3.
Let's find out.
It sank.
It sinks.
Okay, we said that it was going to float, and it didn't. It sank. So I'm going to circle no, because I was wrong. If you said it was going to sink, you would circle yes. Okay, ready? Next one is paper. Paper. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Float or sink? Okay. Marcus. We don't have any Marcus. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Okay, you think it's going to float? Okay. We'll go back on this. Okay, float. Okay, let's go, everybody. Give me thumbs up when you're ready. 2, 3. Okay. Go ahead. Here we go. Countdown. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let's find out.
Okay. It floated.
Floating.
Okay. So I'm going to circle yes. Alrighty then. Okay. Next one is plastic. Plastic. We have a top. Okay. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Float or sink? Okay, so you mark down float or sink. What do you think? float or sink? I'm not going to do it, so give me thumbs up when you're done. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 5. Very good. Okay, so let's count and see. All right? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let's find out.
Okay.
Ah,
It floats.
it's floating.
So there it is, and I'm going to say yes. All right. Okay. And the next one is a safety pin. How many of you guys got that right, by the way? Very good, very good. Okay, so we have safety pin. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Float or sink? Okay. Okay, so what do you think, Mike? Okay, you think it's going to float. Okay. All right, let's check. 1, 2, 3.
Let's find out. Wow.
No, it sank.
It sinks.
Okay. All right, so we have 2 more things we can do. Does anybody have something that they want to see if it's going to sink or float? Oh, okay. We have a pencil. Here we go. All right, I'm going to write pencil. Pencil. Okay. All right. Gonna wait a couple of seconds for you to write down pencil. And think, is it gonna float or do you think it's gonna sink? What do you think? Float or sink? Okay. You think sink? Okay. You think float? All right. If you think float, check. Check this one for float. If you think it's going to sink, check this one. Okay, I think it's going to sink. Okay, let's try. 1, 2, 3.
I'm curious to find out. Okay. All right, let's go. Wow.
It floated. I
Yeah.
am wrong. So, I'm going to put no, I was not right. Okay, anybody else? Okay, scissors. So I'm going to write right here. Yeah, I knew I was going to mess that up. Okay. All right. Nope, I'm going to have to do this. Okay. Scissors. Okay. Do you think they're going to float? Do you think they're going to sink? Float or sink? Okay. We'll wait a couple seconds. Okay. I think they're going to sink. So I am going to do this. Okay, give me thumbs up. All right. We'll go ahead. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, let's find out.
Ah,
Wow.
I was right. They sunk, yeah.
Yeah, they sang. They sing.
Good job. Okay. All right. So, should probably. Okay, so let's go ahead and review. Sink or float? What do you think? We have a ball. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Sink or float? What do you think? Okay. Michaela, what do you think? Okay, you said float. Let's see. Float. Good job. All right. We have a rock. What do you think? Andrew, is it going to sink or float? Float? Okay, let's see. No, not float. It's going to sink. Okay, apple. Apple. What do you think? Is it going to sink or float? What do you think, Miss Sandy?
Well,
Sink or float?
I think it will sink.
Think it will sink?
It will sink, I think.
Okay. Nope. It's going to
Oh,
float.
it floats.
In the
Okay.
U.S., we bob for apples, so I knew they float.
All right.
Okay, ice. What about ice? Do you think ice is gonna float or sink? What do you think? Okay, you think it's going to float? Let's see. Yes, good job. It floats. All right. Then we have paper clip. Is it going to sink or float? Sink or float? Momo, what do you think? Sink? Let's see. Good job. And last one is a bouncy ball. So bouncy ball, is it going to float or sink? What do you think, Jennifer? Okay, let's see. Sink. There we go. Okay, there we go. So remember, buoyancy is the ability to float and sink in the water. Okay, good job.